everyone, and welcome to this edition of Takeaway Tuesday, where we're going to discuss how children talk about events. In a prior edition of Takeaway Tuesday, we examined the first 7 principles. Today we're going to be examining the last 8. What we know about children is oftentimes when they're in a forensic interview, they're recounting elements of what they've experienced or witnessed. There may be error rates. So we as interviewers, as we're gathering information from children, we need to be asking open-ended narrative encouraging prompts. Doing so will lower the number of errors that children may encounter or give in a forensic interview. Another challenge when we're conducting interviews is we want to reduce the number of specific WH questions or direct yes/no questions in a forensic interview. So what we need to make sure that we do is when we ask a very focused question that we follow, and our next question should be narrative encouraging. That way, we're giving the children the opportunity to share complete recall and not just specific pieces of what they've experienced. We also know that another problem with these focused recall questions is they tend to limit recall. That, in other words, because we want narrative, again, narrative information or narrative questions elicit more accurate, more reliable information, that the focus prompts don't always effectively cue up memory. In other words, they're putting a false barrier around that memory recall. And we don't want that. We really want these kids to go back in and shift through their memories and give us as much narrative as they can. Another reason for using those open-ended questions in a forensic interview. Children's style of reporting is often geared to our style of questioning. So what we may ask in an interview is, tell me everything that happens. And what we're doing is asking for what generally occurs, what generally happens. That's scripting information. What we want to make sure is that our questioning tries to get to specific episodes. So if I ask a child, tell me about one time that you remember, or talk to me about one time that you can't forget, then from that point on, as we're discussing one particular event, I don't need to be asking scripting questions. I don't want to ask, and then what happens? I want to ask, and then what happened? So pay attention to your language. Make sure that if you want a script, that you use scripting questions. And if you want episodic information, you're asking for episodic questions. Now, all CACs were started with the idea of one interview, but there is a subset of children that are going to benefit from more than one interview. The literature calls it a repeat interview, but it's just giving the child a second chance to come in and give us additional information. People sometimes get a little bit concerned that, oh, well, what if they don't tell us exactly exactly what they told us in the first interview? Or what if they add some new information? That's what we're looking for. It's just the way memory works, and that's okay. So it's definitely a jurisdictional decision if you conduct more than one interview. What we want you to think about is being open to giving that opportunity to some of the children that may need more time to disclose exactly what they've experienced or what they've witnessed. If you and I and 2 other people are on opposite street corners and we witness a car accident, and then later we're interviewed by law enforcement, we're all going to give a similar accounting, but there's going to be specific differences. So know that if you have children that have witnessed the same event, because of maybe differences in age and cognitive abilities, they're going to have a different perspective, and some of their information may have some variance. Be okay with that variance. One of the myths when it comes to children giving us information, and then as time goes by, there is the belief that all children will start to lose some of that information. There is now some research that comes back and says for some of these children, dependent on their age when they were initially interviewed, let's say we have a 3-year-old who tells us a who and a what, but later we're interviewing that child maybe at 4 or 5, it may be that that 4 or 5-year-old could give us some additional information, and that may be because they have a larger vocabulary, they have better verbal skills. So don't assume that all children are going to lose information. One of the last principles that we're going to be talking about today is that children can give us false narratives. They can lie in a forensic interview. What we want you to think about is that if a child comes in and there is some false narrative or something that doesn't make sense depending on the evidence that you have, that there might be various reasons for things not making sense. It could be that the child is fabricating. They've made a decision to lie. It could be, though, that just suggestibility of questions from prior individuals that have encountered and talked with that child, that the child is taking those suggestions and weaving those suggestions into their narrative account. It could be, especially for younger children, source misattribution. In other words, if we have a child who witnessed a homicide and that child's placed with different caretakers and they listen to those caretakers, and then later we interview, and they may have incorporated some of that dialogue from those caretakers into their interview. It's not that they are deliberately fabricating, it's just a source misattribution.
If you'd like more information, please check out calio.org. Also look at the NCAC Virtual Training Center for different webinars and seminars that have been recorded with experts in the field. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please email me at the link below. Thanks and have a great day.